In this lesson, we'll continue discussing printing. If you'd like to follow along, go under the File menu to Open, and in the Working Files folder, go into chapter number 15 and select Export to Acrobat for print, and just click Open. How do you make an Acrobat out of InDesign? Easy. Just go under your File menu to Export. And in the dialog that opens, for Format, choose Adobe PDF Print. And then just hit Save. Why don't we go through the dialog? At the very top, it says Adobe PDF Preset, and there's a pop-up menu. By default, it's High Quality Print. That's a great preset if you're printing to a desktop printer. There's also down the bottom, Smallest File Size. That's creating an Acrobat that's a small enough file size to email. Yet the resolution is high enough that if you were to send your layout to a client, they'll be able to see exactly what's going on there for approval purposes. Then there's Press Quality. Why don't we choose that? Well, if I choose Press Quality, which is for printing to a printing press, which is telling me right here in the description, does that mean I have everything that I need in this Acrobat for printing to a printing press for any printer? And the answer is no. These presets, in some cases, are just a starting point. You need to talk to your printer to get his or her correct settings. Also, I want you to notice in the Adobe PDF preset pop-up that all of these are in brackets. They are all of the default presets for Acrobat. If you were to create your own presets, which we'll talk about in a little while, they will not have those brackets. So I'm going to choose Press Quality, and let's go through the various settings. In the General section, you're going to see that a lot of what's happening in the top half has to do with print. I mean, it's very similar to the Print dialog box. Do I want to include all of my pages in this Acrobat? Or is it just a range? Do I want individual pages? Or do I want spreads? I may want spreads if I was sending a low-res Acrobat to my client for approvals, so they can see exactly what the layout looks like in spreads. I'm going to stick with pages. In the Options section, do I want to view the PDF after exporting it? Probably. You should really take a look at the Acrobat just to make sure that it looks good. Do I want to include things like bookmarks and hyperlinks? Probably not. If it's for print, you don't need bookmarks and hyperlinks. They're just going to make the file bigger unnecessarily. Do I want to include non-printing objects? I don't think so. Not for a press quality document. Do I want to have my visible guides and grids? Not for press. You don't want to print guides and grids. So you're not going to include any of this in a press Acrobat. Why don't we go to the compression section? Basically what this is doing is optimizing your Acrobat for press. It's going to be high resolution, 300 pixels per inch. But it's quite possible in your layout that a lot of the images were not used at actual size. They may have been scaled down to, let's say, 50% of the original size. Well, that high resolution image at 50% of the actual size will not be 300 pixels per inch. It will actually be 600 pixels per inch because it's moving all the pixels closer together to make the image smaller in your layout. So all of the extra resolution isn't doing you any good. So downsampling is a good thing. It's optimizing the file for press, high resolution, but at the smallest possible file size for that Acrobat. Down the bottom, it says compress, text, and line art. Well, there's a good reason to get your printer's settings, because it's quite possible that the output device that your printer is using can't handle compressed text. Call your printer. Do I want to crop the image data to the frames? Well, any image data that's being cropped off, you don't need it in the Acrobat, so you might as well check that. It's just making the file size smaller without affecting what is actually going to print. I'm going to go into the marks and bleed section, and do I know whether my printer needs crop marks? I don't know. I have to talk to my printer. Maybe my printer wants all of the printer's marks, or maybe it's possible they want just crop marks. Bleed and slug settings. Well, you'll notice that press quality doesn't include bleed. Good reason to go through your settings. If I have bleed in a document, which this document does, I want to use document bleed settings. In that way, my Acrobat will include the bleed that's necessary to print correctly. I'm going to go to the output section. Another very excellent reason to call your printer. Do you have any idea what your printer is using as their color profile? You have to get your settings from your printer. Let me go into the advanced section, and you'll notice that transparency flattener is grayed out. That's because the compatibility of a press quality Acrobat is by default Acrobat 5. If you were to go back to Acrobat 4, there was no transparency in Acrobat 4. So then you could set up your transparency flattener to high resolution. But chances are your printer is using Acrobat 5, so it's not necessary. Let's talk for just a minute about security. Is this document a top secret document? Well, if it is, you can require a password to open the document. If you don't require security for a document that you're sending to a printer or to a client, don't use security. Because if you happen to forget your password, you will not be able to open the Acrobat. Why don't we go into the summary section? This is everything that you did, all of the settings that you set up. If I go to the various disclosure arrows, I'll have all of the settings. I could also save a summary. So your printer could save a summary and just email it to you. And you can set up all of the settings and then save a preset. There's a Save Preset button down the bottom, and I could name it and click OK. And that would end up in my Adobe PDF presets. So the next time that I'm setting up an Acrobat with certain settings, I already have the preset. I don't have to go through all of the settings again. So save presets will save you a lot of time. We're going to continue discussing printing in the next lesson.